Hello, my name is Nico. I'm currently in Évora taking my master's in linguistics, but as you see, I really love literature, so I will be talking about this one today. I thought it was very adequate to have the Cathedral of Évora on the back, and I'm here today to record a review of The Monk by Matthew Lewis. This is one of the biggest pieces of Goth literature. After having read Bram Stoker's Dracula and also Shelley's Frankenstein, I would say this one was my favorite out of the two together even. It came before both of these two other books as well, and it has great influence from Goethe's Faust. So Matthew Lewis was born in 1775 to a public affairs father. His mother was someone very artsy, someone that always supported his desire to write and create literature, even though he only published like 1 or 2 pieces along with The Monk. He ran away from his father. He really tried to divorce her, but he wasn't able to do so, but she was always escaping to different lands, and he always served as a bridge in between his father and his mother. He still talked to his mother a lot, even though she ran away and eloped with a guy, because she always supported him. So since he loved literature, he really had this desire to create a lot of stuff. He wasn't able to because he had to focus on what his father had planned for his life. He stayed a while in France to study French, in Germany to study German. He met big names of literature like Goethe, Byron, and it's said that he was the one who introduced Faust to Byron. And well, you can see that he really took a lot of inspiration from Goethe's Faust into The Monk, because we can see that there's like a deal with the devil, someone trying to influence the main character into doing this wrong stuff. Particularly about the monk, he has to pay for all of the sins he's committed, whereas Faust gets redeemed. What Coleridge said about The Monk is, it is a book which, if a parent saw in the hands of a son or daughter, he might turn reasonably pale. But I suspect that it's because Coleridge was very envy of the success that The Monk had. So, because later in his life, he also wrote a lot of polemic stuff. Lewis published this when he was 20 years old, which would also become sort of a problem for him because he was a public affairs person, and he could have his morals and ethics judged based on the things he wrote with The Monk. So he changed the content of The Monk in some later versions, which I have no interest in reading because this is particularly the most interesting one for me. It was heavily criticized because the book has passages in which it comments on the sexual improprieties of the Bible. So we do know that the Bible is a holy book, right? But at the same time, it also reveals all of the treacheries of humankind. So all of the bad stuff we've done, Sodom and Gomorrah, for instance, we see many of the faults and how God will judge the saints based on each one's personal story. But you do get to learn about things that maybe you wouldn't have seen in real life just by reading the Bible. But trying to keep a pristine image of himself later on in his life, he had to change it. Unfortunately, he was very afraid of getting yellow fever, but that's what he died of when he was coming back from Jamaica to England. The book has a lot of foreshadowing of many of the things that will happen, because Lewis really liked poems, so he does a lot of poems throughout the book, which is like an omen of what's going to happen to each character. So even though you know that someone's doomed, you still find it interesting the way he develops that doom, you know, because that's the point of the book. So I know there's this saying of the catharsis, when people aren't expecting anything to happen and then this suddenly happens. But as a person who doesn't really care for spoilers, I love this about the book because we already know that many things are going to happen at a certain point. The great part of the book is how he makes these things come to life, how these people go from a good position into their downfall. So we have 5 important characters. First, Ambrosio, the monk. Second, Rosario, who's a woman that is disguised as a monk to be close to Ambrosio, and she's called Mathilda. If you've already read Goethe's Faust, you'll know that her position here is like Mephistopheles in Faust. Then we have Antonia, which is a very young girl. She's 14 years old. She's very pretty. She's courted by people, but her mom is not in a good financial situation. If her mom dies, she doesn't know whatever is going to happen to her. She's in the hands of destiny. Then we have Elvira, that is her mother. Agnes and Lorenzo, parallel characters that also make part of the main plot, but they also serve as the second story that we see intercalated with the story of Ambrosio. Then we have Don Raymond, that sometimes we see him called as Afonso, and he's interested in Lorenzo's sister, which is Agnes, and Lorenzo is interested in Antonia, just so you already know that. And some very interesting character that is like in the mythology, in the European imaginary, which is the Bleeding Nun and the Wandering Jew. Since Lewis was a big fan of theater, he kind of got inspiration from Shakespeare in here, because we have these two stories that are intercalating between each other. The main plot is the monk, right? How he's the saint of the saints, because he was delivered to a monastery when he was very young. He never got in contact with sin before that. The second story is Don Raymond, or Alfonso, that wants to elope with Agnes, that is promised to be a nun from her birth, but she doesn't want to, and she really loves Alfonso, and then they try to get together, but many things happen. In the end, both of these stories align. I think Lewis did that incredibly well. As someone that really likes languages and learning other languages, the story is supposed to be depicted in Madrid, Spain, but instead the names of the characters and many of the phrases that he puts in there that are supposed to be in Spanish are actually Italian, or if they do look like one of the languages, it looks more like Italian than Spanish. Like Lorenzo is more like, you could have Spanish people named that, but it's more like an Italian name. Ambrosio, Antonia, like that to me was very funny. He didn't have AI at that time, he didn't have access to the internet, obviously, so I understand why. I also find interesting how he ends a chapter, because he gets right in the highest points of you're really expecting something, and he passes to the other plot. So I thought he had great timing with when he was changing from story to story. The book talks a lot about morals, ethics, Catholicism, free will, and one's consciousness while taking responsibility for their own actions. We have this thing in the back of our heads, this institution in the back of our heads, that even though no one sees our actions and the things we have done, we get to judge ourselves. So I think this is a very key point in the novel as well. And if you really regret something, if no one has caught you, which really says about your own morals and your own ethics. It also talks a lot about abuse of power. Throughout Europe, the Catholic Church had a lot of power over them, whereas England was more Protestant. So he got away with this book at that time because he was criticizing the Catholic Church and they were Protestants. So when he published it, it was alright. But then some of the things in the book got him into trouble later, because they were not only on Catholicism but also a little bit onto Christianism when we talk about the contents of the Bible. So going back to Ambrosio, since he was raised his entire life inside a monastery, he was considered to be a saint because he hadn't even been in the slightest contact with sin. But something that we get to question a lot in here is someone just conditioned not to being a bad person because they didn't get in contact with bad things, so they didn't really have to make an ethic choice? Or would they have done all of the horrible stuff if they had the chance to? He was considered to be more saint than even the angels by some. He didn't even know the difference between a man and a woman. His monastic seclusion had till now been in his favor, since it gave him no room for discovering his bad qualities. The superiority of his talents raised him too far above his companions to permit his being jealous of them. His exemplary piety, persuasive eloquence, and pleasing manners had secured him universal esteem, and consequently he had no injuries to revenge. His ambition was justified by his acknowledged merit, and his pride considered as no more than proper confidence. He never saw, much less conversed with the other sex. He was ignorant of the pleasures in woman's power to bestow, and if he read in the course of his studies that men were found, he smiled and wondered how. For a time, spare diet, frequent watching, and severe penance cooled and repressed the natural warmth of his constitution. But no sooner did opportunity present itself, no sooner did he catch a glimpse of joys to which he was a stranger, than religion's barriers were too feeble to resist the overwhelming torrent of his desires. All impediments yield before the force of his temperament, warm, sanguine, and voluptuous in the excess, and yet his other passions lay dormant, but they only needed to be once awakened to display themselves with violence as great and irresistible. He just didn't commit these things because he was raised apart from the outside world, but when something penetrates inside the monastery and he has the chance of committing a sin, even though he was compelled into doing so, the decision was his. How did he start becoming tempted into committing these crimes? There's a key character for this. It's Rosario, or Mathilda, and it's a very young priest that joins the order and sees Ambrosio as the highest inspiration in the world to become someone's saint. It is actually a woman, right, Mathilda, a very beautiful young woman. She reveals herself to Ambrosio because there was a pic of the Madonna, right, the mother of Jesus, that resembled her strongly. So he started having this desire towards her and says that she joined the order also because she was in love with him and she wanted to be closer to him. He reproaches her at first, not tempt him no more, until Ambrosio gets bitten by a snake. But then Mathilda goes there, or Rosario if you prefer, and sucks the poison out of his body. But then she is the one who's going to die. When she is all sick, she reveals to him that that was the reason why he wasn't going to die anymore, but that she was going to die. So yeah, and then she insists on this too much that desire becomes too hard for him to resist, and he ends up indulging in the intercourse with her. After this, she says that she can finally find a way to cure herself from the poison, and then they go like under the crypts of the convent of St. Clare, because there's only a wall dividing the monastery of these priests to the convent of the nuns, and starts doing some things that look like magic. But anyways, she's saved. He finally found a way to feed into his desires, and they keep having intercourse with each other. Before they even get to do this for the first time, we're cut to the story of Anais and Don Raymond, or Alfonso. In all of this drama with Rosario and Ambrosio, there's the story of Agnes, a nun that's going to confess herself to Ambrosio, and she ends up letting a letter fall. And then he picks the letter and he reads it, finds out that she's pregnant and she's planning to elope. Instead of having some sympathy for her, he lets the prioress of the convent know about it, and she's going to be punished for that. And he's aware of that, but he has no piety, even though she begged it to him. This has a lot more to do with his ego, because he was considered by the entire Madrid as the holiest person to ever walk the earth after Jesus. So he didn't want to stain his image, and that's why he decides not to help her, to cover up the fact that she's pregnant and she wants to escape. Showing sympathy for others is also a holy quality of someone, and he chooses his image before her very severe case. It was something about her, the birth complications that gave her life, and then she went to live in Germany, and then that's when Don Raymond, or Alfonso, falls in love with her, and coincidentally, he's best friends with her brother, who was there in Madrid, and they meet in Germany, right? The lady that takes care of her, it's her aunt, if I'm not mistaken, is very enchanted by the brave knight Alfonso de Alvarado. And when she finds out that he's not in love with her, but with her niece, she decides to not let him marry her and definitely turn Agnes into a nun. Then in here is when we get the story of the Bleeding Nun. The Bleeding Nun was already something in the European imaginary, but then in here Lewis really put everything together, and it's a nun that haunted the castle in which Agnes was living. So there was on a specific night that this nun used to walk around the castle and then run away through the front door. Agnes doesn't believe that this story is real, so she decides to dress herself as the nun and escape with Alfonso. In the night that she decides to do so, she puts a lot of blood into her, she dresses herself as a nun. Alfonso comes to pick her up. He definitely picks up Bleeding Nun, but he actually picked up the ghost itself. And when she finally comes down and looks out for Alfonso, Alfonso didn't show up. She thought she was abandoned by him. She would have to suffer through this decision. And even after that, Alfonso doesn't show up anymore, but that's because he became haunted by the Bleeding Nun, and she came every night to kiss him. And he started falling sick, and even more sick, until he almost died. Finally, a very distinct guy shows up and starts telling him how he could help him get rid of the nun. When he's finally able to get away from there, he has to go to Madrid and try to claim the girl he loved. So after a while having intercourse with Rosario, he's not satisfied with her anymore, and he feels disgusted towards her, but at the same time he still wants to keep on having sex, but he feels like she has brought him to the sinner side, has this distaste towards her. Ever since he committed this crime, he started being entranced into committing even more crimes as well. Antonia, a very beautiful young lady, shows up in there to ask him to go see her mother that fell sick and needs some aid, and she wanted him to go there to her house and pray for her. He has a vow of never leaving the monastery, but he sees in here a chance to spend some time with her. So this is the excerpt in which we have about when he's lusting after this young lady. The eyes of the luxurious friar devoured their charms. Had his penitents consulted those interpreters, he would have needed no other means of expressing his desires. For his misfortune, they were so strongly persuaded of his continence that the possibility of his harboring indecent thoughts never once entered their imaginations. Well, so one day, her mother has already recovered a bit, and he tries to look for her because she's not there in the room of her mom, and he gets into her own room. He really sees a chance of trying to kiss her or do something to her. So he starts asking very nasty questions to her. Have you seen a man, Antonia, whom, though never seen before, you seemed long to have sought, whose form, though a stranger's, was familiar to your eyes, the sound of whose voice soothed you, pleased you, penetrated to your very soul, in whose presence you rejoiced, for whose absence you lamented, with whom your heart seemed to expand, and in whose bosom, with confidence unbounded, you reposed the cares of your own. Have you not felt all this, Antonia? Certainly I have. The first time I saw you, I felt it. But Antonia is a very innocent character. She doesn't understand that it's in a romantic manner, in a passionate manner that he's relating to. She thinks it's because of the holiness and because of the sanctity that he brings with his presence, because of his eloquence and capacity of developing whatever discourse, whatever thing he wanted to communicate in the church. And that was the only reason she felt closer to him. But now he wasn't anymore, and he wanted to get his way with her. So taking the chance that the mother was sick, Ambrosio takes the chance to do something to Antonia. The book says, Ambrosio no longer possessed himself. Wild with desire, he clasped the blushing tremble in his arms. He fastened his lips greedily upon hers, sucked in her pure, delicious breath, violated with his bold hand the treasures of her bosom, and wound around him her soft and yielding limbs. And then she gets very scared. She gets alarmed, but he keeps pushing himself into her until her mom, who's recovered a little bit, already sensing that there's something going on, because contrary to Antonia, she's very well aware of all of the bad things in the world and gets there on time to save her. He didn't care at all about Elvira, and now that Elvira had recovered, she asked him to never go there again. Since he did get the chance to put his hands in Antonia, now he cannot control his passion, his lust, and his desire, so he gets help from Mathilda, and Mathilda gets some help from the devil. He doesn't want to get involved with these things, but he accepts the help from it and breaking into Antonia's house. And then at a certain night, he goes there into her room, and when he's trying to take advantage of her, her mom had a nightmare and sensed that something was going to happen, and came back from a trip that she went on. And then when she gets there, Ambrosio chokes her to death, starts feeling alarmed, and doesn't do anything to Antonia anymore, and runs back to the monastery. Now he knows that besides the fact that he took advantage of this 14-year-old girl and that he was having intercourse with Mathilda inside the monastery, he also has the death of Elvira under his wing. He instantly regrets what he's done, but when no one realizes that what happened to Elvira was an assassination, a murder, they assume that she came back from her trip because of this nightmare to go after her daughter, but when she just arrived there, he died on the spot. Since he wasn't caught, he doesn't feel guilty anymore for the things he's done. He feels like he doesn't have the barrier of her mother anymore, and Mathilda helps him get some sort of poison from the convent to make it seem like she's dead, so she will be in the crypt under the convent, and then he'll do whatever he wanted with her. When he has the chance to go there, visit her, and give this poison, he does so. Antonia is taken as dead, and they bury her at the convent of St. Clair. All of these things are happening. Lorenzo was going after the prioress and trying to show all of the wrong things happening at the convent and how they had no pity for people and punished too severely people that were inside there. During a parade for St. Clair, they finally bring down the prioress. They wanted at first for her to be judged, but the fury of the people was so harsh that they ended up killing the prioress, going after many of the nuns, even the nuns that didn't do anything wrong ever, burned the convent. And while all of these things are happening, they finally start finding all of the dirt that was hidden within the convent. They are finally able to find Agnes, that prioress lied that she was dead and was keeping her in the crypt among dead bodies of other nuns. Her abortion was kept on top of her belly, and she didn't want to let go of it. When Lorenzo, her own brother, finds her, he doesn't even recognize her. Thankfully, she recovers, and she's finally able to get together with her loved one, Alfonso or Don Raymond. Now, with Antonia, I'm back here now at home because I realized the mic stopped working at the end of the video there. So I'll give in some more information about other things that I would like to add up, and also give some more comments about the book. When they are down there in the crypts and Antonia wakes from her fake death, she gets very scared because of her surroundings and all of the corpses. The monk really wants to get her for himself and starts questioning why she's terrified. What you fear from me, from one who adores you? What matters it where you are? This sepulchre seems to me the love's bower. This gloom is the friendly night of mystery, which he spreads over our delights. Such do I think it, and such must my Antonia. Yes, my sweet girl, yes. Your veins shall glow with the fire which circles in mine, and my transports shall be doubled by you sharing them. While I was reading the book, I went to the library at the university I'm in right now, and I found this book, La Littérature et la Mort, just because I got very interested by the title, and the first page I got was talking about the monk, and especially this part in here. Michel Picard talks about the overall gloomy aesthetic of this dark goth story, and he reflects upon the ambience that this gives to the rest of the novel. So if you're just listening to this, I will read as it is in the book, because this book is in French, but then I'll put in the screen the translation for it. C'est que le pays des morts représente un espace de liberté fantasmatique sans rival. Compte tenu de nos représentations courantes de physicisme, les romans noirs presque explicitement illustrés sont recurs à l'inconscient par ces décors habituels, cryptes, catacombes, corridors, intérieurs obscurs et dangereuses. Les moines de Lewis demeurent un véritable parangon à cet égard. Un cimetière souterrain y joue un grand rôle, lieu de sépulture démoniale et des moines. Dans la partie réservée aux sœurs de Sainte-Claire trône un caveau, au centre duquel se creuse un abîme profond. Le tout ornementé des crânes épars, des ossements divers, des statues funéraires et des dalles tombales, d'un climat maussin, froid et humide, et la plupart du temps dans l'obscurité la plus noire. Ce cimetière me semble le temple de l'amour, dit Ambrosio Antonia au moment de la violer. Mathilda Rosario, empoisonnée, y trouve, grâce à des pratiques magiques à minuit, la possibilité non seulement d'écarter la mort mais convoquer Lucifer. Anais, religieuse coupable, y a encarcérée parmi les cadavres en putréfaction, de lave, quelques lézards et crapauds. Son nouveau-né légitime y meurt dans ses bras et le verre de mort cuit bientôt sur le petit corps sans vie qu'elle serre contre son taillé, son rue jusqu'autour de ses doigts. Enfin, on y enterre dans les dernières pages au vire, la mère bafouée, assassinée puis Antonia, la fille faussement violée puis le tout de même poignardée, par les mêmes personnages le démoniaque et faible moine Ambrosio, le fils et frère qui recevra in extremis le châtiment qu'il mérite et sera damné. Bien fait pour lui. Voilà une lecture revigorante. Mais c'est vraiment revigorant de lire ça. Bataille a bien noté l'association inévitable entre les anthologies de l'analité et ceux de la mort. La charogne d'échange chez Baudelaire, les chevals morts dans la hutte de Flandre, mais combien d'avantages un corps humain décomposé les horrifie et ne s'épuise. On a déjà révélé les doubles sens de la corruption. La mort pure et les sales, c'est mal. Peut-être faudrait-il ajouter à Danton les bistrots, les cadavres crus et du côté de la nature, la culture apparaissant avec les cuits. Ces brutal, agressif surgissement du non culturel, du non civilisé, du non maîtrisé, insupportable dans la réalité, ne peut que constituer un motif, un instrument meilleur dans la fiction. On en joue à se faire peur. C'est la même raison que quelqu'un peut regarder un film d'horreur. Down there in the crypt, Ambrosio rapes her because she resists against him. And right after he's done it, he also feels disgusted towards her and treats her as if she was the one that seduced him. She's crying and she wants to escape, but he doesn't want to let her escape, because of course she would reveal what he had done to her, and he just wanted her for himself for God knows how long. Since the coup is going on, everyone is destroying the convent. They finally find him there with her. He still wants to escape, so he has the chance of letting her live, but he ends up killing her and runs away. But of course he's caught because he has blood all over him, and he's awaiting his sentence. When he's being judged, Mathilda keeps trying to convince him to do a contract with the devil so he would escape punishment from the church, which he resists a lot in the beginning, but when the moment comes, he doesn't want to be punished for it anymore, so he does make this deal with the devil. The devil, of course, doesn't want to help him and uses this as a chance to just put him on a cliff and fall into some rocks and agonize for days, and also reveals to him that Elvira was actually his mother and Antonia was his sister, and also that he had actually been pardoned by the church. That's the difference from Faust. He actually suffers for all the things he's committed. The devil says to him, "Tremble, abandoned hypocrite, inhuman parasite, incestuous ravisher. tremble at the extent of your offenses. And you it was who thought yourself proof against temptation, absolved from all human frailties, and free from error and vice. Is pride then a virtue? Is in humanity no fault? Know, vain man, that I long have marked you for my prey. I watched the movements of your heart. I saw that you were virtuous from vanity, not principle, and I seized the fit moment of seduction. That was very good. I think it really shows the way desire can move someone into doing bad stuff, and sometimes they might not want to be held accountable for these things. You might be tempted, but that's the point of temptation, if you fall for it, because everyone feels tempted at some time in their lives, but it's your response to it and your actions that will really say something about your morals and ethics. So he was never a saint man. He was just saint out of his ego. He was ego-driven and not saint Christianity driven. That's how I will finish this book. So as a suggestion, I would leave The Crime of Priest Amaro by Essa de Queiroz. It's a Portuguese author that also wrote something about the hypocrisy inside the church and also someone feeling tempted. Le Moine, the movie with Vincent Cassel. It's a French movie. Immaculate, because I thought this movie also touches a bit in the hypocrisy of the church, abuse of power, and, you know, body horror. It's really fun. Yeah, and I would also like to ask for suggestions from whoever's watching this. Any other things that poke at this theme of this Christian guilt that someone that is born in a Christian environment might carry throughout their life. I would also like to thank my 120 subscribers for the 760 views in Dracula. That's a lot, and I'm very happy. So, well, I'll keep doing more videos like this. I also want to thank the people who've been commenting on my videos and my friends that are also watching this. So, huge thanks to Obed, to my family, to my boyfriend, to Morgana, to Keith, Juan, Renata, Larissa, Ear Implants. I don't know if your account with AI things is ironic or not, but I hope so. Well, and I want to wish everyone a happy Halloween. I've also finished reading the book I will review next, which is A Spy in the House of Love by Anais Nin. After that, a review by Hyusmans. And yeah, thank you very much. Hope to see you on my next book review. This one is for the month of September, but it will be released in October because I had so many things to do. But finally, I'll be able to deliver it to y'all. So thank you very much. Have a nice one. Happy Halloween. And ciao.